Today, the man called in to adjudicate the hottest political potato of our age has produced a shortlist. 2 Heathrow options and the expansion of Gatwick. The idea of a vast new airport out in the Thames estuary, popularly tagged Boris Island, is tagged on as requiring more work, with a final decision on its fate next year. We talk live with Boris Johnson. Tonight, the shortlist, the politics and the fallout. They thought it was all over. When the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats formed their coalition after the 2010 general election, it looked to be the death knell for a third runway at Heathrow Airport. But now it's very much back on the table. It was among 3 options for airport expansion proposed by a government commission today, along with a major extension of an existing runway or an alternative plan to enlarge Gatwick Airport. Boris Johnson's proposal for a new airport in the Thames estuary will be given further consideration, as our economics editor Faisal reports.
This happens 1,300 times a day at Heathrow, but Britain's largest airport is nearly full. And the question, should Heathrow, Britain's only major hub, be made bigger, as the current government recently ruled out? There are no easy decisions, even as the shortlist for an extra runway is cut to 3, maybe 4 options. But in a field between the villages of Sipson and Harmondsworth, now Heathrow Airport's preferred location for touchdown on a third runway, you start to see why attempts to expand airport capacity are so toxic and consistently delayed. The problems for Heathrow's remaining preferred option start at the end of this field. A village would have to be flattened, 1,500 houses demolished, listed buildings too. But it's not just that. There are environmental, noise and political constraints upon the expansion of Heathrow like no other airport.
This is Harmondsworth. It would be flattened, demolished and completely off the map, yes.
Today's Davis Commission interim report has only fired up the resistance of campaigners such as Margaret Thorburn, and not just at Heathrow. But here in Harmondsworth, an entire village, including listed buildings, are now under threat of being turned into tarmac. Because we were told by the government it was all off the table.
Shocked, horrified and appalled, really, that a government can be so easily swayed by big business, because that's really what's done it. It's the huge campaign. They've been pouring loads of money into the campaign recently, in the last year or two, to get Heathrow back onto the agenda and indeed to frighten people.
So what are the options to expand airport capacity in the southeast? That third runway could be built through Harmondsworth to the northwest of Heathrow. Or the existing northern runway could be doubled in length, allowing planes to take off and land at the same time. Then there's the second runway that could be built at Gatwick. Or a brand new airport at the Isle of Grain, also under consideration, though not yet on the official shortlist. Mayor of London Boris Johnson thinks that this would enable huge growth whilst moving the noise from heavily populated areas to the Thames estuary. But it would cost £112 billion, says the Davis Commission.
Well, the Mayor of London is quite sure that he knows the answer to this, which is that you need one very, very big hub and that's the future. I'm not so sure. I'm not as sure as him. I don't know quite why he is so sure, because if you look at the trends, it's not so clear. But if that's what you think, then that's the answer you come up with. So if you begin your process, as he did, by saying it can't be Heathrow and it must be a hub, well, then that's where you get to where he's got to. But we can't afford to do that.
The Davis Commission will now look at whether the bill for connecting up a brand new airport to rail and road networks is worth it, but all the noises from the Commission were rather sceptical, and not just because of cost. The argument both for the island airport and Heathrow has been motivated by trying to keep up with the huge growth of mega-hub airports in the east, some with as many as 9 runways. The politics may be rather toxic, but there's a giant economic call to be made too, in deciding essentially between expansion here at Heathrow and at Gatwick. And it's a vision of air travel in the future. It's either huge hubs like Heathrow connecting with other hubs like Shanghai and Dubai, or a different vision of point-to-point travel on competing airlines, low-cost airlines, and that would favour Gatwick. The vision? Low-cost airlines flying long-haul to the US or India. Gatwick is emerging as something of a dark horse candidate for this extra runway.
We've got connections down into China and also Vietnam, and next year to Indonesia. So this is the benefit of Gatwick. We can serve with legacy carriers, the emerging economies, but at the same time we can also offer affordable flights to low-cost carriers within Europe, and that's something that Heathrow just can't do. They've priced themselves out of that market.
But beware, exercises in aviation futurology tend to be rather flawed.
Well, in a moment we'll be speaking to the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. But first to our political editor, Gary Gibbon. Gary, this is a pretty divisive issue down there, but particularly amongst the Tories, isn't it?
Yes, particularly amongst the Tories. It was David Cameron who said no ifs, no buts, no third runway. But the other two main party leaders have been in a similar sort of position in the recent political past, and today all three of them are staying pretty much stum and trying to sit on the fence on the whole issue. They're being reminded by those people behind them who are original supporters of no third runway that this is what they've said in the past. No one more vociferous than David Cameron's backbencher, Zach Goldsmith. This is what he said.
Prime Minister absolutely must come clean. He doesn't have to come clean now, but he needs to come clean before the election. If he wants to expand Heathrow, he needs to say so, and he needs to do a very significant mea culpa, because he made an absolutely black and white, unambiguous promise. He came to my constituency just to say one thing: no ifs, no buts, there'll be no third runway. He did the same in all the other constituencies affected, and on the back of that, a lot of people invested trust in him. So if he were to do a U-turn on this issue, it would be gigantic for him.
And I don't think David Cameron has any intention of serving himself up on a platter to Zach Goldsmith in the way he's suggesting. Neither do the other party leaders. They have the comfort of knowing that the main Howard Davis report will not come out, as always planned, until the other side of the general election. Funny timing that. But there will be a mini report of a kind, which won't be very good reading for the man who's in the studio waiting to chat, and that's Boris Johnson. He's been handed a sort of fig leaf today, told that his option, Boris Island, is not off the table. He responded by saying it's not dead yet. It hardly sounds like sort of Mike Tyson fighting chat, does it? You can't help thinking he thinks the end is near for his dream.
Gary, thanks very much. John.
Well, as Gary warned, we are now joined from City Hall by the Mayor for London, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, if I was talking to you not as the Mayor but as the journalist that you are, I think you would detect a stench, a whiff, the possibility of political intrigue here, where your island has been shoehorned into the back end of this thing. It's not on the shortlist, and let's face it, it's unlikely to be.
I'll take whatever status we've got. I think it's very good news that it hasn't been ruled out, and it gives us a huge opportunity now in the next 6 months or so to make the case for the solution in the Thames estuary, which, by the way, is far, far better than anything that is currently being offered by the Davies Commission. And I think it is, I heard what Zach had to say. I think he's absolutely right about the horror that will be aroused by the idea of a new runway at Heathrow. To build this runway, you have to construct a kind of pontoon over the M25. You've got to spend about the thick end of tens of billions on transport infrastructure alone, just for the Heathrow options. And then there's the huge noise impacts. No other city in the world would do this to its inhabitants, and no other mayor would tolerate it. So, and the other problem really with Heathrow is it is just not going to happen. David Cameron and the government were right first time. They were right to rule it out. The difficulties, the legal difficulties, will be absolutely insurmountable. This thing will go on to the crack of doom.
Nevertheless,
we will be pushing Zimmer frames around
Mr.
before
Mayor,
there is a third runway.
Mr. Mayor, I must stop this because we need to have a discussion, and the discussion seems to centre on whether this commission, which was appointed by the government, has the freedom to come up with the solution it independently arrives at. And if it comes up with a solution for Heathrow, the question is, how far will you fight? I mean, is it worth the rest of your political career to put your commitment behind saving the people of West London if the situation is so severe? I mean, would you run for the leadership of the Tory party to ensure that it led to this position?
Well, that's not remotely related subject. What
well,
I'm
how
trying
big
to
a
do
principle
is
is it?
defend
how big a principle is it?
The pledge I made in 2008, again in 2012, indeed the pledge that the government made in 2010 when they were all elected, and to get a bit of common sense back into this debate and just get everybody to recognise that a third runway at Heathrow is not only a disaster, but it's also not going to happen. We need to focus on,
let's
what
just,
I think is a much more pragmatic
But let's just
solution.
distill this.
And I'm delighted that Howard Davies has kept it in the frame. What we want to do now is advance some of the argument, show how the costs, I think he's exaggerating
but
those,
now that this has
show
happened,
that the environmental impacts in the east of London are negligible.
We need to know, therefore, do you stand by whatever decision the Commission reaches? So if they reach a Commission which says, yeah, let's go for your island, fine. But if they say we go to Heathrow, do you accept that is the decision?
No, this is not the law of the Medes and the Persians. This is, I'm here to represent my constituents. I'm here to represent the electorate that returned me twice on a very explicit manifesto. I'm not here to
okay, and therefore, if David Cameron, so
that's what I will continue to do. But I want to be there is a very positive argument that we are making, and that is that there is a much better alternative, and we've got the chance now to get the message across, particularly about the economic benefits.
Yeah, which you've stressed already. So let's be very specific here. If David Cameron decides to stand by the decision of the Commission that he has appointed and therefore has to live with a Heathrow solution, will he have betrayed you?
Well, I certainly think it would be the wrong decision, and I will. He knows my views on this, and there's no sort of big issue about this. Everybody understands that it's my strong view. This would be the wrong thing for the city and for the country, and I will continue to make that point. And I have every confidence that we have very, very powerful arguments on our side.
All right, well then may I put something to you?
And I think that's what people want to hear.
Let me put a specific to you. Howard Davies said on this programme, I don't know how Boris Johnson has such certainty about his position. He does not think that your central premise, that you need a great hub airport in the form that you've designed it, is needed. Okay. What he talks about is the vast expansion in short-haul regional flying. And that is what is actually happening, and that is what his figures prove.
Well, actually, I don't think that is the case at all, and that's very interesting and important, and that is the substance of the debate. Because if you look at what's happening around the world, everywhere else, including our main European rivals, but particularly obviously in the Middle East, in Dubai, in India, in China, they are going for large hub airports. And the advantage of a hub, John, is that you can get a much greater concentration of inbound travellers that you can then fire off to a multiplicity of routes. So you build up connectivity to a wide range of destinations. And that is where Britain at the moment is losing out. We're losing out to Frankfurt, to Schiphol, to France, all of which have now got many more routes out to China, to Latin America, the growth markets of tomorrow than we have.
We could paint the world across with runways, but alas, we haven't got the programme to do it. But thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.